Throughout the Bible, we read of many fascinating acts and miracles by Jesus, from raising the dead to healing the sick and casting out demons. However, one story stands out. The one where he cast a legion of demons out of a possessed man into a herd of pigs. This was the first and only time Jesus listened to and did what the demons demanded. But come to think of it, why did the demons make this surprising but bizarre request to be cast into pigs? Why did Jesus heed their request? And what's the implication of this event in today's world? Well, join me as I uncover the hidden meaning behind this mysterious request and how it's still at play in our world today. Before we start, it's only right that I provide biblical context to this interesting story narrated in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. For the purpose of this video, let's focus on the version described in Luke chapter 8, verses 26 to 36. There we read, "They sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, 'What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me.' For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' 'Legion,' he replied, because many demons had gone into him, and they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs were feeding on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Now, reading the demon's plea in this scripture, it is impossible not to be surprised, because if they're as powerful as many people think, they should fight back and not plead, right? Well, that leads us to the first and most important lesson that this event teaches. Lesson 1. Jesus has the power and authority over evil. As the story progresses, we find that it provides a detailed explanation of the powers that the demons possessed. It didn't stop in making the man behave like a wild animal. It also drove him to a graveyard where he lived with the dead and decaying. The demons also forced the man to operate in unnatural levels of power, breaking his chains and chasing away anyone that came close. The torment was so terrible that it pushed the man to constantly harm himself. In Mark 5, verse 4, we read that no one, not even the doctors or the strongest man in his village, could tame him. This demonstrates just how powerful and violent the demons that possessed him were. But then came Jesus, the head over all principalities and powers. Jesus came to earth in human form, but it didn't mean he relinquished his ability to rule over any demonic forces he encountered. The demons knew this, and that's why they reacted the way they did. They didn't only fear him, but they acknowledged his authority and made it clear that they were powerless before him. This is an important testimony to the sovereignty of God. It's also an important testimony to the sovereignty of Christ over the forces of evil. Even the demons know that Christ has the power over torment. He has the power of the keys. And guess what? This is not even an isolated example in the Bible. There are many other instances where God shows his power and supremacy over the devil and his demons. Even today, Christ has continued to show us that he's more powerful than all the forces arrayed against us. Isn't it beautiful that irrespective of what the devil does, we can tap into the same authority Christ has over him by simply believing in his finished work on the cross? Lesson 2. The demons' request for permission indicates their submission to Jesus' authority. This passage is one of the more detailed accounts of demonic activity in the Bible, so it provides more details of demonic submission to God's authority than most other stories in the Bible. From this event, we can see that although demons are servants of Satan, they still acknowledge the spiritual position of Jesus over them. By design, demons should rebel against God, His plan, His ways, and His righteousness. But despite aligning themselves against the Lord, they were powerless before Him. They acknowledged His position, His authority over them, and His power to send them to torment. And when He commanded them to leave, they left without hesitation. This authority is re-emphasized over and over in different parts of the Scripture. Even today, the devil still respects the authority of Jesus Christ. The Bible assures us in Romans 14, verse 11, that every knee shall bow before God. Does this not clearly show that the diseases, issues, and poverty tormenting us cannot even stand at the appearance of Jesus Christ? So why did they choose pigs? We can't get the correct answer to this question unless we understand the symbolism and cultural context of the time. From the moment the demons encountered Jesus, they knew He would cast them out. Thus, they needed a new host, and the pigs considered impure under the Mosaic law were an obvious choice. The impurity of the pigs can be traced back to the Jewish culture. Leviticus 11 verses 7 and 8 explains how and why God commanded the Israelites to avoid pigs as part of their diets. The Israelites forbade touching or eating pigs. Thus, it was easy for the demons and impure spirits to identify with the pigs. But beyond this, the demons' request also had a number of other significances, including, number 1, the preservation of their existence. The demons, knowing that Jesus had the power to cast them out and into the abyss, sought to avoid being destroyed. Demons have a strong knowledge of the concept of judgment. They know what will befall them and when the time for judgment finally comes. They also know that Jesus has the power to hasten this judgment and cast them into eternal damnation. Thus, to continue their existence, they needed a lighter punishment, and being cast into an unclean and forbidden animal was enough punishment at that moment. Besides, they needed to be cast into an unclean destination consistent with their nature, and pigs ticked the boxes. Moreover, during this time, pigs were mostly associated with Gentile culture and pagan practices that were often against Jewish faith and precepts. Number 2, desire for manifestation. Demons thrive on chaos and destruction. So, entering the pigs meant that they could maintain a physical presence and exert their influence in the visible realm. Demons always seek control because it's through absolute control that they can manifest their powers. It is the same reason demons possess people today. They're constantly looking for vessels through which they can operate and show off their powers. Unfortunately, many people have fallen into the trap of letting the devil control them without knowing that they have a demonic attachment. And since demons have the power to hide themselves and just operate in the background for years, it is often difficult to tell exactly when the demon possession happened. Their request to be cast into the pigs shows that demons typically manifest when people are at their lowest point in life and are less likely to fight off evil imaginations. This is why the Bible often bases its principles on a life focused on the cross. The more focused our life is on the cross, the easier it becomes to cast out every evil imagination and, by extension, not give in to the devices of the enemy. Number 3, display of power. The demons may have seen it as an opportunity to demonstrate their power and cause fear among the onlookers. By driving the pigs to their destruction, they aimed to create a spectacle that would spread fear and confusion, furthering their influence over the people in the region. However, if you review the story well, you'll find that the devil doesn't have as much power as he shows. Recall that he had to politely ask Jesus to be cast into the pigs. God is all-powerful, faith is all-powerful, but the devil, he has to very politely ask to get what he wants. The sheer number of the herd of pigs grazing in the open area where Jesus met this man indicated that it was a predominantly Gentile area, where the people did not observe or care about Jewish dietary laws. This adds another layer to the reason behind the demons' request to enter the pigs. Even though they were sure about being cast out, they preferred staying in an area that was not consistent with the Jewish culture that was accepted by God. Throughout the Bible, we find varying descriptions of the nature of demons. Matthew chapter 12 describes demons as unclean spirits. Other scriptures identify them as co-rebels with the devil, who were evicted from heaven and condemned to eternal damnation. Since their fall, demons have become full followers of Satan, joining him to oppose God and his people. In Ephesians 6:12, Paul warns Christians not to think that their earthly battles is against flesh or blood. Instead, we must note that our battle is against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world. Notice the mention of powers, rulers, and authorities. This is a clear indication that one of the devil's biggest tasks is to battle believers and ensure that they don't reach their maximum potential. However, we must recognize that we have the same authority that Christ had on earth. The demons recognized this authority when Jesus approached the possessed man. They knew better than to stand against Christ's authority, and so they requested to be cast into the pigs from where they could continue their destructive works. The event also showed demons to be relentless and evil in their quest to continually torment people. However, since they needed a host to continue their torment and destructive works, they jumped on the opportunity to enter the pigs. No doubt, this event is a powerful reminder that spiritual evil exists, but beyond that, it shows Christ's supremacy over all spiritual evil. As the event progresses, the demons cause the pigs to rush into the water and drown, causing commotion among the onlooking villagers. However, instead of being grateful to Jesus for liberating the man possessed with an evil spirit, they became terrified, asking Jesus to leave their territory. In their defense, though, the pigs were being raised on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, which was a predominantly Gentile area. These pigs were not wild but were being raised for the market, and it was not unusual for the owners to be devastated by the destruction of their herd, estimated by Mark at about 2,000 pigs. The demons' request to enter the pigs had an additional deadly purpose, as demons are known to cause confusion and suffering to God's creation, fostering hostility against Christ. The destruction of the pigs caused the Gentiles living in the area to ask Jesus to leave, revealing the nature of the devil to harden the heart of man and cause hostility against Christ. Over the centuries, the world has constantly rejected Jesus because of its preference to focus on the economic importance of the pigs. The accounts in Mark and Luke go on to explain what happened after the deliverance. The possessed man begged to join Jesus. However, instead of jumping at the opportunity to get one new follower, Jesus instructs the man to go back to his family and tell them what happened to him. This not only shows Christ's wisdom, it goes on to show Christ's foreknowledge of God accepting the Gentiles. So, while the 12 apostles were the chosen ones who would carry the gospel to the length of the earth at the death of Christ, the possessed man was sent beforehand to spread the news of Christ's redemptive power. The loss of the herds also exposes the true values of the people living in the area, who preferred pigs to people and swine to the life of the man who had suffered demonic possession all the days of his life. The main concern of the herdsmen and the surrounding villagers was the potential economic downfall that the event would cause. The villagers were outraged by the turn of events, and that caused them to ask Jesus to leave. Unfortunately, we still make the same mistakes today by getting too used to sin and not allowing God to wash such sins away, especially when the said sins bring us income or pleasure. But then, clinging to sin, irrespective of how small or big they are, is the biggest mistake we can make. Truly, we can't tell this story without looking at the significance of the ending part. It was one of the first places that Jesus showed that his ministry is not limited to the Jews. It also shows that the opposition to the ministry of Jesus was not only Jewish. The Gentiles, even though they had not fully known Jesus or the basis for his ministry, also opposed his ministry, driving him away from their territory. Now, away from the biblical story, let's talk briefly about the relevance of this event to our contemporary world. Every time we read about the event, we're reminded of the power of evil in the world and the constant need for spiritual vigilance. Even Jesus warns us not to be ignorant of the devil's devices and his constant quest to rule over our souls. 1 Peter 5, verse 8. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. At the same time, the story of the demons and the pigs reminds us of Christ's authority over all things, including spiritual forces. For every Christian today, this passage calls on our complete trust in the power of Jesus Christ, and to sow purification and holiness in our lives. It challenges us to constantly look at our lives, evaluating our priorities, and recognizing the importance of spiritual transformation over material concerns. Let's briefly go back to the once possessed man. Notice that by this time the man's name had changed from the possessed man, because according to Luke chapter 8 verse 35, then they went out to see what was done, and came to Jesus and found the man out of whom the devils had departed sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. The man's yearning for Jesus is an illustration of the changes that had taken place in his heart. Before the deliverance, he was only interested in what Jesus could do for him. But after his encounter with God, he wanted Jesus himself. He wanted to follow Jesus like the other apostles. It took Jesus' rebuke and encouragement for him to go back to his people. This was despite the man's genuine intention to follow him. Jesus was well aware that the man's testimony to his family and people was way more significant than any work he'd do if he followed Jesus. Truly, it can be challenging for us to understand the way God operates at times, but we must always trust in His ability to make the best outcome out of every situation. Also, notice that Jesus granted the ill request of the people to leave the town, but didn't grant the genuine request of the man who wanted to follow Him. This leads us to God's word in Isaiah 55 verses 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Those present at the scene might have thought Jesus to be wicked since he did not grant the man's request. However, looking at it now, we can see the reason Jesus refused to grant his request, choosing instead to send him back to his people. After all, the man would have far more influence among his people than Jesus ever had. Again, the event shows us the importance of one soul to Jesus Christ. As the events unfolded, it became more and more obvious that Jesus had traveled hundreds of miles to come and rescue the man from demon's possession. Does that not remind us of the parable of the lost sheep? Christ is indeed compassionate. He's proven over and over that he'll come in search of the one lost sheep. Today, he's still searching for the lost sheep, and that's why he constantly stands at the door of our hearts, knocking and waiting for us to accept him. Will you open your heart to him and allow him to deliver you from the torments of sin? Tell me what you think about this video in the comments section below. Do you think it was right for the people to chase Jesus away, despite seeing his miraculous work? And hey, don't forget to like this video and share with your friends on all social media platforms. Until I bring another interesting video your way, may God richly bless you.